Here I have an image in Photoshop that I've actually carved up similarly to how I carved up the peasant girl. I went in and, I have a background image, but I went into that background image and used my lasso tool to select parts of that original image, copy and paste them into their own layer. So now I can turn them on and off independently of one another. I have the entire background layer, which I think in the end I'm going to swap out for something else. But I do want to clean up my different layers, and I'm just going to use the clone tool so that I can add content that isn't actually there, right? Actually, there's a cart that sits in this spot, but I'm just going to clone tool out the background. Now I'm going to jump over to After Effects and start a new composition. And I'm going to import that file. I've done all my clone tooling. It is a Photoshop file. I don't want it as footage, I want it as composition so I can keep all my layers. I'll do editable layer styles. And we see that I have a comp 1 and comp 2. Actually, the comp 2 is an accident, so I'll remove that. But if I double click on streets, we see that comp contains all my layers that I've added to, and I'm going to go ahead and make them into a 3D space here. And let's go into the 4 views so we can see what we're doing better. All of those layers are independent of one another, but they sit exactly on the same spot in the z-axis. So what I'm going to do is go through each one of the layers and move them in the z-space. I can do so by highlighting the layer in my timeline and then jumping up into the view. I'm going to start with my background layer, which is the layer 0 copy, and go to the z-space, and I'm going to push that layer back. I will need to resize it because it's going so far back that it's getting smaller, and I will want to make that larger so that it fills up the back of the stage. And then I'm going to go to each one of the layers, get its z-space, and move each layer. By the way, I've jumped ahead here. I moved each layer in the z-space. It's actually quite complicated. I even added a camera. I even swapped out the background, so there's apparently some footage missing. I did add that camera though, and everything is stacked up in that z-space now. It's we're looking overhead and you can see it. In the camera, I've adjusted my zoom and I'm enabling depth of field. You'll notice it's a shorter zoom, it's a shorter distance between the camera and its point of interest. I did hit UU on my camera layer and it opened up the point of interest position and camera options, and I want to animate the point of interest and position as well as the aperture. What's happening is you'll see from the top down in the right view that my camera is moving through z-space. It's moving through z-space, and my different objects from the different layers are existing in that z-space. I can go back and adjust my zoom just so if you want to see that. I can change my zoom and focus distance, which will then change my focal length, and you'll notice that changes where my camera and the point of interest is. Basically it's opening up how far. It's like a zoom lens. It can see how far and how wide you can see in your imagery. I'm scrubbing over to see the movement of the camera. Of course, it gets super pixelated at the end because I'm just using a scrub. I'm going to go ahead and throw a light in on here. I'm going to do a spotlight. We'll sort of tone down some of the harsh edges of this scene. And I can move that camera through the space. Now that we have the spot, it works a little bit better. Again, it's getting pixelated right here just because I'm not doing a RAM preview. I'm just scrubbing back and forth. I'm going to go ahead and get my light position changed here. I want to move it in my Z-space, and I'm just hovering over with my cursor until I get that Z-space. I can back out and it lights more of the scene, and I can zoom in and it lights a specific area. I don't actually have my light being animated in here. It's just the camera moving through that space. Now I have my aperture opened wide, and what that means is when I pass by the objects with the camera, they become blurry. I'm actually going to add another light. You don't have to have just one light on any scene. I want to add this light and move the position so that it focuses starting on the cart. I'm just showing you how I can swing around. I can use the transform point of interest and position to animate the camera. And right now I'm sort of have that second camera highlighting the cart. It's a way of having the user's eye, training their eye where to look. This second camera I am going to animate. I'll go out in time here, and I would like to change the point of interest and the position to be these lovely ladies standing in the corner. I'm just going to use, just scrub through my Z space to get them highlighted. And I might adjust the x-axis as well so that it's the same light starts at the cart and swings over to the ladies. Now it is too intense for me, although it's fine for the cart. And I could do this a number of ways. I could move the point of interest of the light in a specific way. But what I'm just going to do, which is a quick fix and maybe not the best way to structure it, is I'm going to animate the light options, the intensity of the light option. So I start off, the cart is fine. When I get to the ladies, my spot is too bright, so I'm going to add a keyframe, which I did by clicking on the diamond, and I'm going to bring that intensity down. Now I did a keyframe A to keyframe B because I want the intensity to remain consistent from the first time we see from the cart, but I want it to change from just about here to the end and reduce in intensity. So I know I'm whizzing through this, but maybe we can get into some more detailed discussion during class time. So now we can sort of preview how it's going to look. The different characters are being lit in an interesting way. One thing is there's an aura of it being, of the cart, for instance, floating in space. Part of that issue is that the bottom, I actually have a bottom layer, and I'm not animating the bottom layer. I'm just zooming in, and it would actually make sense for that to animate alongside with the objects. Basically the camera's moving at a different space, in different space than the cart and the bottom layer. So I'm just going to go ahead and animate that position. I don't want to go too far because then my bottom layer is sitting in Z space in front of my left and right wall and my characters. And I would probably want to spend more time syncing up the cart's movement, the camera's movement, and that position movement. But you can see even just animating that the ground, if you will, helps improve the feeling of the cart moving in space.